Picture a patient who does everything right. They strictly cut their daily calories, they exercise every single day, and yet they step on the scale after a month and the number hasn't moved an inch. When the traditional calories in, calories out model stops working, the default assumption is usually that the patient is secretly cheating on their diet or lacking willpower. But the clinical data tells a completely different story. Medical science now recognizes obesity as a chronic disease. It requires long-term management, much like hypertension or asthma, rather than being treated as a temporary behavioral flaw. Let's look inside the brain to see why this happens. When you restrict your calorie intake, a region called the hypothalamus misinterprets the sudden drop in energy. Instead of recognizing a healthy diet, it sounds a physiological starvation alert. To achieve lasting weight loss, you have to stop relying solely on willpower to fight your daily habits and start strategically outsmarting your body's programmed survival mechanisms. The moment that starvation alert rings, your body launches a counterattack against your calorie deficit. In medicine, this physiological pushback is known as an adaptive response. This diagram illustrates the first phase of that defense. As stomach volume is restricted, your gastrointestinal tract alters its hormonal signaling, sending a sharp upward spike of hunger hormones straight to the brain to make you feel ravenous. At the exact same time, notice this second line plummeting. Your body actively lowers its resting metabolic rate, burning fewer calories at rest to hoard whatever energy reserves you have left. This tightening wedge between intense hunger and a slowing metabolism is the exact physiological reason strict diets inevitably hit a wall. Before a physician will declare a metabolism completely stuck, they have to systematically rule out the hidden variables that might be contributing to that wall. Hitting a weight loss plateau means your body's biological defense systems are fully activated. Breaking through that barrier requires a medical response rather than simply trying to eat less. A clinical audit starts with the medicine cabinet. Common prescriptions like blood pressure pills, antidepressants, and even contraceptives frequently cause drug-induced weight gain. Next, doctors look closely for behavioral blind spots. Skipping meals or drinking liquid calories, like regular soda or coffee with cream, inevitably triggers compensatory overeating later in the day to make up for uncontrolled hunger. Sleep is another major factor. Poor sleep quality or untreated sleep apnea spikes your stress hormones, which signals your body to actively store fat instead of burning it. Once those hidden blockers are managed, the next step is resetting expectations. We need to move away from aesthetic perfection and look at what constitutes a successful weight loss target in clinical reality. This chart shows exactly what that looks like. A modest 5 to 10% decrease in initial body weight triggers a massive, disproportionate drop in both cardiovascular and diabetes risk. Achieving and maintaining that 5 to 10% reduction is a major medical victory, providing sustained protection against the chronic complications of obesity. To reach that health target, clinical guidelines recommend a baseline deficit of 500 to 1,000 calories a day. A practical way to achieve this is the 9-inch plate method shown here. Fill half the plate with non-starchy vegetables, a quarter with lean protein, and the final quarter with whole grains. Sticking to this requires cognitive restructuring. This means training yourself to view a dietary slip-up, like overeating one evening, as a temporary lapse to learn from, rather than a catastrophic failure that ruins the entire effort. Then there is physical activity. Ramping up to 300 minutes of exercise a week is clinically essential, not necessarily for the initial weight loss, but to maintain that loss against the metabolic pushback we mapped out earlier. But what happens when you adhere perfectly to these lifestyle changes and the biological defense still refuses to break? That exact moment is the clinical escalation point. For severe metabolic resistance, specialists escalate to pharmacological treatments like anti-obesity medications or even bariatric surgery. These interventions work directly at the cellular level. These targeted therapies repair the communication between the gut and the brain, quieting the starvation alert and allowing the metabolism to function without constant biological interference. Treating obesity is a lifelong, cumulative endeavor. Success requires moving past temporary diets and working with medical professionals to recalibrate the body's internal signaling for long-term health.